I was so elated, happy, grateful when I got invited to play at the Back to the Beginning last year. I was the only one from that era that that performed. I went there with the intention purely of face to face, thank him, for what he did for my career, and share it. And then once I'm there in Birmingham, I learned that everybody else was there for the same reason.
I'm a really old fan.
You're a young fan. Come on.
Not that young, I'm 60. Yeah?
Oh, you're a kid.
So, Rudy, really nice talking to you, man. We're going to talk about this book. This is the Brazilian version,
Yes,
at
yes,
last.
yes, yes. I know. In Portuguese, actually, the first language that the book was published in was actually Japanese for Burn magazine. Burn magazine, I don't know, years ago when I first released it, they had a book division. Uh, Maybe they still do. I am not sure. But they did then, and they were the first one to publish the book. And I was self-publishing at the time, and then it got published by somebody else, a publishing company, and then the contract was over, and I started publishing in English, self-publishing, and then I was approached by Belas Letras, and I am so happy to have the book translated to Portuguese. It's incredible. I love it.
It's been 20 years since you released.
Yeah, it's a timeless story about a certain period. So it's just a new generation that becomes interested in reading the book. Every year, this young musicians send me on social media messages about, oh, I just discovered your book, or somebody gave it to me, like, as a present. Uh, and they are fascinated about the whole thing, not only about Randy's story, but also how different things were before internet or technology had taken over our lives, or I love technology. I'm the biggest fan, and you can let it take over your life, or you can just use it as a collaborator in your life, and that's the way I like to look at it.
It was a very important period for you and for Ozzy too, huh?
For all of us, everybody, Sharon, Randy, Tommy Aldridge. Yeah, it was something that I don't think it had ever been attempted. Well, it had been attempted, but not successfully. How to how to take a member such as the singer of one of the biggest bands in the world and start brand new and try to elevate them to the same level or higher than their previous band. Robert Plant could not do it with Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin will always be bigger, and Mick Jagger, he couldn't do it. Pete Townsend couldn't do it. The Who will always be bigger. But Ozzy, that's a whole different story.
Were you a fan of Black Sabbath?
My story is the average starving musician. And in Miami, all the records that I used to buy were so I could learn the songs, so I could play them in clubs. We didn't get paid a whole lot of money. It was just kind of like going to school. We learned a lot by experience and experiencing others, like other great musicians that were playing in the circuit. I learned a lot from watching them. I always open my everything about tone to execution to choice of notes, being a professional. It was the best experience I ever had, learning experience, even though I'm still learning, but this like it's like from zero. somebody was having this conversation with somebody a couple of days ago about, they asked me what inspired me to play. And I said, yeah, it was my generation. I'm 75 years old. So my generation, we got the glimpse of what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives by watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
64.
Okay, 64. Yeah, yeah. I think it was February 9th, 64. And it was kind of like the presentation was very simple. I want what they have, mainly the adulation of girls that were going crazy. I had just turned 13 years old, and I wanted that because before that I was just basically very invisible. Nobody, I did not exist. You know, it had a lot to do with the fact that I had just been in the United States for 2 years, so I wasn't very social. I did not have any command of the language. Also, I was very fat as a kid. Uh, Back in the '60s, being fat was not socially acceptable. You watch a lot of old movies. Very few people were fat. So I had a few things going against me, and what happened was that music really leveled the playing field socially. The kids that would not commingle in school, all of a sudden, you went from like before you saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan, you comb your hair like back with a pompadour, and then the Monday after the Beatles playing on Ed Sullivan, you went back to school, and everybody, the kids that got it, that went into that, just had like we comb our hair forward. So that was kind of like an identity. We knew who was part of the team, the tribe, and so that opened a lot of doors because I had just been in the country for 2 years, and you know at the very beginning people did not know what the heck is these Latinos, these Cubans moving in into our neighborhood and things like that. So it was kind of like a little bit awkward socially to be able to navigate that. But I saw that as an opportunity to let people know that we're all the same. So the more they got to know me, the more they understood their own humanity. That we're all the same. But going back to that moment of seeing the Beatles and deciding like that's what I want, it was kind of like, okay, I want that, but how am I gonna get it? So it's like reverse engineering to get there. You know what you want, but you just don't know how to get it. So that was like the big journey of you see a mountain and you want to climb it. How are you gonna get up there? So my brother got, even though he's 4 years younger than me, we got to play a lot. Not at the very beginning, but more towards the end of us being in Florida because we left together
To New
to
York.
to New York, yeah, to look for other opportunities besides playing disco music, which I love now. I mean, I had to play it, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to spend the rest of my life playing because I wanted to be in a rock band. But now that I'm in a rock band, I can listen to everything without any emotional competition. Like this style of music is selling more records than what I'm doing and things like that. That were part of the music industry.
Mango was one of your first bands?
Mango, I say, is one of my favorite fruits. Yeah, Mango was just like, just like many other bands that we were in, just so it was a name, Mango. Okay. Uh, because we figured we want a name that the Anglos and the Latinos understand. It's a fruit. Everybody understands a fruit, mango, especially in Florida. There's mango trees everywhere. you know. So it was basically that. It was just a club band. We just did a lot of covers. That was it. We were just trying to make some money so we can buy better gear, and it was very competitive in Miami. The music scene in clubs, very, very competitive. There was a lot of great bands, so you had to like somehow find your way into a situation where you could sustain, maybe do a residency like we did a few times that we were the house band and then there were more experienced bands as the headliners.
You have a great memory because the book's so full of details. What did you have a kind of a diary? What did you use, yeah, to write the book?
Yeah, the reason why I kept the diary was because my family's accountant, tax accountant, uh, he, because for the first time I'm making money, you know, I mean like real money, constantly, not just like a few dollars here in a club and another club. And they never really took our social security number or anything. They just paid us under the table. That's the way they run things in Miami at the time. And, and now, there's I'm getting paid. They got my social security number, putting money into my, paying taxes and all that. I said, okay, now I need accountability. So he suggested keep a diary of everything, the places you go to, how much money you spend, where you do, and blah, blah, blah. So that was the source of my diary. Being able to read to every day, I knew where I was and how much money I spent and what we were doing, where we were playing, where we were staying at, all that. I had receipts and everything. So that was my source because I could not rely on the tour book because a lot of during that time it was a bit of a struggle to get Ozzy to play shows in a row. He was going through things at home. He did not like staying away from England because his wife, not Sharon, but his first wife, Thelma, and he had the kids and all of that. So it's like, he told me, man, I've been doing this for over 16 years, and and I need a break. But I'm so glad that Randy came into my life, and it's just like yeah, I'm so excited about the new music. So he understood that he needed to go out there to promote it and continue his career, establish his career as a solo artist. But also there was this part of him that just wanted to like spend some time with his family. You know, so a lot of the times he's just it was a struggle just to keep him on the road. So some shows will get rescheduled and so on. So whatever was on the tour book originally were not the actual dates. It was whatever I had on my diary. At the end of the Blizzard of Oz tour, right before we went on the road, a month later for the Diary of a Madman tour, because both records were recorded before Tommy Alders and I joined the band. So we went out to promote Blizzard, and then here is Diary of a Madman waiting to be released.
This one.
That one, yeah, that one, yeah, yeah.
Many things that I really didn't know in this book. First one, a band that I really like.
Yeah, I was actually a member of Angel when the bass player that was in the band, for some reason, I never asked. It was not on my business why he was not there anymore. But I joined the band, and I really liked the guys. Basically, I was just stuck in my head, I want to be in this band, Angel, and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, I got the phone call from Sharon to come down on audition, and I told her no thanks. I'm in a band. And then I told Kevin, who I was living with. He says, "Who called you? Who was that?" And I said, "Oh yeah, Ozzy's manager, Sharon, blah blah blah." And he starts yelling at me,
Are you
saying,
crazy?
"Man, yeah, you're crazy. You just, you could have been playing with Randy again, and all of these things." He told me, just I'm going like, "Oh God, he's right." Well, I screwed up. And then the next day, Ozzy calls me. So by then, I was like, yes, that wasn't even thinking about it. It was like, absolutely, I'll be there. And then that night we got together, and basically he told me, listen, Randy says that you're the guy, and please just be able to play. So they trusted Randy's recommendation. His they trusted Randy completely at every level. So all I had to do is the next day learn music that I never heard before in my whole life and play it an hour later. you know. Thankfully, Randy showed me some of the bass riffs because we need to like learn it quickly. You know, it wasn't like I had time to like put on the record, listen to it, and then pick it up. Because back then that's what we had. You listen to a record, you play along, and then you have to play it again. And now we have like on my iPhone, I got programs that I can just like isolate things that completely different.
I'd like to talk about the test. It was in Zappa's studio, Frank Zappa, and you said that there were many bass players also to do
Yeah,
this
yeah.
test. Was
Oh yeah.
anyone famous that you could recognize it by that time?
No, no.
No.
All I know is no, because I did not hang out with any of them. I was too. We walked into the rehearsal place, and Randy, Tommy, and we went over the songs a couple of times before Ozzy and Sharon got there, and then as Ozzy and Sharon show up, and they they listened to us play it one time without Ozzy. Then Ozzy gets up on stage, sings with us, and then Ozzy turns around to me and says, "Hey man, do you want the gig?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Okay." So then Sharon went over to tell the people that were waiting to audition that they found the bass player they were looking for. They needed somebody who they could trust. They if they're auditioning a stranger that nobody in the band, either Tommy or Randy, could say, "Oh yeah, I used to play with this guy, and he's gonna be okay on the road. He's not gonna be a bad influence on Ozzy. Drinking too much with him or partying. He's gonna show up. He's not gonna disappear. He's gonna be professional. He's gonna learn the song." They need all that because we were 10 days away from beginning the tour. There was no time to waste at all, zero. So it was like, okay, this guy can play. He looks okay. He looks the part. He can play the songs. Randy says that this guy is not gonna be trouble. He's it. That was it.
Randy's opinion was very important.
Oh, it was. I mean, they always trusted him. You know, they always did, and respected too. I mean, he earned that. I mean, Randy had to go through the same thing. Randy had to go through the process of, okay, Ozzy saying, I want to play with this guy. He didn't even know what kind of music Randy could come up with. I think if Randy would have played him the two Japanese records, Ozzy might have said, "Oh no, he's not the right one."
The Quiet Riot ones.
Yeah, yeah, because it would have been too light, too pop. Nothing like there's nothing on those records like Mr. Crowley or anything. you know, Revelation Mother Earth. That was not the direction that Quiet Riot was doing, but that was a natural direction musically for Randy. So I asked Randy about this. I heard the record. I was not in the band yet, but he brought over an acetate. Acetate is like, a copy of the master record. And no cover, no nothing. He just wanted me to listen to it. And I'm listening to it, I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, what the hell happened? Because it wasn't that long. It was less than a year that he brought that record. He went to visit his mom, and he just brought it so he could play it for friends and family. And I'm listening to it. It had not even played on the radio. Crazy Train had not even hit the radio yet. And I'm looking at him and I go, how'd you come up with this music? And he says, well, I asked Ozzy, what do you want me to play? And he said, be yourself. For the first time, Randy could be himself.
Was he that good when you played together in Quiet Riot?
Not a matter of being good. It's a matter of being diverse, diverse musically. We played in Quiet Riot on one style. It's a very little box. We're in LA and we're trying to showcase for the labels, and this is the type of music that we are getting signed on. Plus, it was not the musicians in the band were not mature enough. And I would say even when I was in the band, I would say Kevin was not mature enough to handle musically at that point in his life because he did mature musically during when he put his own band, Dubrow, and then of course, which led to Mental Health was actually recorded as Dubrow, and then it got changed the name to Quiet Riot when I joined the band. You know,
This
uh,
one.
so Kevin was not mature. I mean, you're talking about the difference of writing with Ozzy, who have been doing it for 16 years, rather than somebody who's still playing in a local band musically. You know, big, big difference. And of course, you got Bob Daisley and then Lee Kerslake, who are veterans and great composers in their own right. So it was he was Randy now was surrounded by people who had musical density knowledge. Randy was very educated musically. His mom and dad came, they built music school. Randy was raised in a music school, so he knew theory, composition, sight reading, all of that. He was more advanced than any one of us musically. He was the teacher too. So now Randy is with other musicians who are more at his level, or they're actually they're a little bit of under his level because Randy, of course, he had all that education, but everybody else share uh, incredible talent in their own way. You know, like Bob was very influential in the lyrics of the song. I wasn't there for the process of writing, so he might have also been influential musically. Not just his bass parts, but writing music. I know the core of it musically is Randy because I used to hear him play a lot of those parts, not with Quiet Riot, but when I was also teaching at the music school. In between students, he would pick up his classical guitar, which is the first time I ever heard him play classical. And I'm going, I didn't know you could play that. I mean, like that or whatever. And he goes, yeah, this is my first instrument, classical guitar. And then I started playing electric because I wanted to hang out with other kids and impress the girls. He thought girls didn't care about some guy playing a classical guitar rather than a electric guitar. Now you're a rock star. You know?
You're the right person to tell me, was there a rivalry between Randy and Eddie Van Halen by that time?
No, that's no. I think it's a myth that people, we're in a time in history where alternate realities are very common. People invent things to suit their own journey in life. People don't know the difference between an opinion and a fact. So they'll make a statement based on an opinion to somebody who has experienced what they're talking about because they're so programmed to believe an opinion rather than a fact.
Talking about your book, are all of these facts? Everything here is true?
It's true. It's true. I mean, I had it. It was easier writing that because this is what I did. I took I said, okay, I have to write this book, and this is the seed of me writing the book. I started going on MySpace. This is like over 20 years ago. Again, opinions of fans writing about, well, Randy was actually killed because somebody wanted him dead for financial reasons, and then they started blaming all these people that I'm going. This is incredible. And I said, you know what? If I don't write the facts, these lies, these innuendos, these conspiracy theories will become facts because nobody is disputing them and really putting out the truth of what happened and how it happened. Very simple. So I said, okay, and then I thought, okay, is anybody else that was there writing a book about it? And I waited. I waited about a month or two. I said, you know what? And it got worse and worse and worse because once you take that step of the commitment of writing at least one page a day, which is what I was advised by professional writers, friends of mine. Because I went to them and said, how do you do this? And they said, just write one printable page a day. I said, okay. So it took me 3 bands and 2 laptops to complete the book. And by the end of it, when I wrote the end, something happened that I was not really expecting. I got closure. I did not realize that I've been carrying the weight of that experience, meaning Randy's, you know, death. All those years, it had been 20 years. I just thought that this weight, this thing that it just was just normal. Maybe I'm getting older. Maybe it's everything else. No, it was mainly that. There were other things, but mainly that. Once I was able to put the weight of my shoulders on paper, on print, on the screen of my laptop, it was like, ah, okay, this all came from here, now it's there. You know what? One of the questions I get asked the most, especially in interviews, is about what happened that day. And now I have a source that say, you know what? If you really want to know what happened that day, I wrote a book about it. And there it is. It's very painful for me to go back to that place and time because when I talk about it, like when I wrote the book, I thought it was going to be the hardest chapter to write. And actually, it just poured out of me. I couldn't type fast enough because it was just kind of like waiting to come out. And once it did, it was like, I don't believe it. I couldn't even breathe because I was trying to breathe and write and the memories and being there and all of that and the smell, this everything from the grass to the smoke.
You talked about feeling guilty to be alive.
Well, it's called survivor's remorse. Everybody goes through that. It's not a guilt, it's just a remorse. Because yeah, we all feel like, why me? Why did I survive and not, you know? But sometimes I get people telling me, oh no, it was an accident. What happened? I can, I'm going to tell you the facts. Why I truly believe it was not an accident. And it's all in the book. Well, sometimes when people read, they don't take notes of what adding up. That whole chapter is a list of how and why it happened. Put into a story, not a bullet point. Like, okay, here are the bullet points, that's the why. So, but people don't read it like that. They read it as it's almost like watching a movie, like watching the Titanic. Horrible things are going on, but you're sitting there watching it and you're going like, wow. And then you're looking at the special effects, you're looking at this and that, some things get in the way, the dialogue, the music, whatever. But still, there is a laundry list of why that ship sank and so many people died. It is in my book. Uh, well, let me just briefly put something in mind. Okay, we're talking about an airplane in a field, in a big field, right? 360. no, 360, and that plane could have gone that way, could have crashed over there, over there, over there, over here, anywhere it wanted. But no, it went straight for the plane. I stood right next to the point of impact where the tip of the wing hit the plane and it touched my nose. It was that high. I'm 5'10". So it must have been 5 feet off the ground. The precision to actually go in and hit the plane, but not low enough to crash into the plane. That's because there was struggle. The people that were, oh no, I know there was struggle.
Do you think that the pilot was trying to kill his wife on the ground?
Yeah, trying to kill everybody. I mean, to kill his wife, he would have to like kill everybody that was asleep in the bus and on the plane. Suicide. He wasn't going to survive. He just wanted to take everybody with him. How could it be an accident when that plane could have crashed anywhere else? So the chances that by chance the plane hit the bus and not a barn down the road or the house or something, they just hit the bus. That was the target. You just don't fire a bullet up in the air and hope that it's going to hit the target. No, you have to like aim at it. Yeah, what are the chances of like you trying to avoid hitting the bus and actually hitting the bus? There's two things. You're either trying to avoid or you're going for it.
Oh, he was trying to scare who was in the bus, or he was
No,
joking.
no, no, because when you do a buzz, because they were buzzing the plane, and it's our theory because now we're putting things together from fact, adding the facts up. No opinions. Here's the facts. Uh, he was measuring it. He was measuring. He already knew he was going to do this. He was just measuring it, going how he was going to do it. That plane, and there's photos that see the roll of film that Don Airy was taking with his camera was confiscated by the aviation, the FAA, right? To have it as proof of this event happened. Then they started making Xerox copy. Xerox, that's what we have 40 something years ago to make copies of photos. You can see the plane coming in perpendicular, obviously, because that's how it hit the bus. Even if there's no photo of it, here's the bus, and the plane came in like this and went tipped over, hit trees, and then hit the house and exploded on impact. So even if there's no photo of the plane going like this, that's how it happened. That's the only way it could happen. If it would have come in like this, it would crash into the bus, but no, clipped the bus. But Don Airy, his photo is like I would say a block away, and he was using a zoom lens. And this is what happened. He was using the zoom lens, and he told me that he's looking through the camera and he's going, "Wow, that's really close." This coming at him, it just went over his head and hit the bus because he put the camera down after he took that photo about a block away, and the plane just went over his head and hit the bus.
And he was inside the plane before.
Yes, yes. Our tour manager Jake Duncan and Don Airy had gone up. There were two trips, and during that trip is where they were buzzing. But they were buzzing, not really coming that close to the bus. They were kind of like, doing that. Uh, and that to me was him gauging how he was going to do this the second time around. His wife was standing on the door of the bus, which is right next to the passenger. The tour buses. It's just like a Greyhound bus. There's a door, and she was standing there, and we know this because when we felt the impact of the plane hitting the bus, Sharon and Ozzy came out of the back lounge. I jumped out of my bunk. We opened the door that separated the front lounge and the bunks, the sleeping area. And there's glass shatter everywhere from the passenger's window, side window, and his wife was frozen on the door like that. Like she was just like she couldn't believe it, what had just happened. She's frozen, and then Sharon had to like push her over to get out of the bus to see what was going on. We had no idea. We thought when I heard that impact, when I felt it, it woke me up. I was asleep. I thought, oh, we must have been in an accident on the road going to the hotel. And and the last thing I expected is to witness what the reality was.
Something that I didn't know. Your brother almost joined the band
Hmm. Yeah, he
instead of
did. Yeah,
Bernie.
yeah. Well, no, there was so much chaos going on, and of course, we didn't have the technology to be clear of what the plan was. There was no plan. There was the only plan was we need another guitar player to continue touring, so Ozzy doesn't go home and kill himself drinking or doing drugs, whatever, you know, because he would have. So it's like let's keep him busy, and that was it. And but we were not aware that Bernie had had already been hired from England. There was no communication, there was no texting, no nothing, and it was so chaotic that trying to get a hold of Sharon, who was at rehearsal with us, there was no cell phones, nothing. So there was this confusion. So Bernie shows up and he didn't even say anything. He could have said, "Hey, I've been hired by the office, Jet Records office in London, and I'm here to play. I've been paid." So he told this afterwards when Robert, got the gig. Then he says, "Oh wait, by the way, I've been paid from England, and for the whole tour and all of that." It was like, oh God, we didn't know this, and so so that's what happened.
And he stayed just for a few gigs, Bernie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was there for a few weeks, and then that's when we got Brad Gillis. Yeah, because he had to go on tour to promote his own record.
And you said that Randy was thinking about leaving the band, quitting the band.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the interviews that Sharon and Ozzy have done. They talked about that. He wanted to go back to school and get his degree in music, and I mean, to him, looking like a rock star was more for like to attract the girls. Because Randy was not one of those guys who had uh like a way to like approach girls and pick them up. No, he was always playing guitar. That's all he really cared about. And of course, he always had a girlfriend. I don't think there was ever a time that in Quiet Riot or even in Ozzy, that Randy did not have a girlfriend waiting at home or whatever. But it wasn't like a that wasn't his motivation. We never talked about politics, religion, who who's going out with who, girls. And no, it was always about music and how, when we were in Quiet Riot and how we were going to write a song that was going to get us a record deal. That was it. We didn't have time for anything else, or we didn't care about anything else.
According to the book, if you allowed me to ask you, he had a quick affair with Sharon, Randy.
Yeah, yeah. Sharon wrote about it in her own book. We were in Canada, and was on the tour bus with Thelma, his first wife. They were still married, Ozzy and Thelma. And then Sharon was traveling. She said, "Okay, I because she really didn't want to be with Ozzy's wife on the same bus. So she said, "Okay, boys, we're gonna fly, and we're gonna let Ozzy and Thelma be on the bus." So we flew everywhere with Sharon, across Canada. And then, one night they were hanging out and partying, and things happened.
How hard and how good was touring with Ozzy? Because he looked like he was drunk and stoned every day and playing pranks with everyone.
It's really interesting because I didn't have a reference at the time. This was the first time that I'm actually on the road with people who are even Randy. By the time that I joined Ozzy, Randy already had recorded 2 albums. He already toured with Ozzy in England and maybe some shows in Europe. And of course, you got Tommy Aldrich, who, along with Ozzy, they've been professional musicians for over 16 years. So here I am, like the least experienced person on the road with them, trying to like keep up with everybody and understand what the dynamics of being on the road is. But I didn't have a reference of like, for example, if I was in Led Zeppelin comparing Robert Plant to Ozzy. No, I didn't know anybody at that level. So I figure, well, whatever he does, this is what rock stars do. He was very generous in every way, you know. And so I can't say that it was bad, because I never thought for a single moment that while I was a member of the band that this whole thing sucked. I never did. I never did. I thought that I was blessed to be there and I'm grateful more than anything to be there during this, because it was so different than anything else that I out there at the same time. It was very different in every way. This is one of the first bands to really rise. Actually, if you look at it, it was the first band from the new wave of British metal to make an impact in the United States. We did that before Def Leppard. Def Leppard was our opening band. We did that before Motorhead. Motorhead was our opening band. We did that before Iron Maiden. These guys are setting, the band Ozzy with the music that they recorded and composed, and then with us on tour promoting that music. We set a certain standard that for the British metal, the new wave of metal, it had never been achieved before for that new wave of metal. I'm not talking about the Who and Led Zeppelin and so on, or Hendrix or anything like that. I'm talking about what was coming, the new one, the 80s metal. When Randy left, or actually when he was still in the late 70s, 79, in Los Angeles, new wave and punk came into the strip, and we played at the same venue. We had to follow them, or they were opening up for them, and we knew that the the presentation of glam rock could not compete with the edgy presentation of punk. We have to step it up. If you look at the 70s typical uh, rock star metal like Deep Purple or Led Zeppelin, they were very static. There was not a whole lot of performing going on, except for like let's say Richie Blackmore, Keith Emerson, guys that went out of their way to really express themselves physically as a performer, but not the whole band. And then in the 80s, you have this era that, you know,
Everyone.
yeah, yeah, it's completely different. And that came from punk.
And did you actually like any punk band by that time?
But again, it was like disco. They're the competition. So by nature, it's not that I didn't like them because I never really would focus on that. I tried it once. I got my hair cut right after Randy left Quiet Riot, and I thought, okay, I got to do something here. So I cut my hair, and we put a band together, trying to write and perform new wave songs. Well, it's one thing is writing the song that sounds new wave, or but then recording it, you still sound like a rock band. You're like, wait, it's a rock band playing a new wave song. So, so it's kind of like, you're not fooling anybody.
I want to know your opinion about the bass lines, Bob Daisley bass lines. Do you actually like them?
He did a wonderful job. I think, he was kind of like a blend between a little bit of Geezer and a little bit of Paul McCartney. That's the best way I can describe him. But then again, it's all Bob Daisley. Geezer had to invent it. I'm not saying Bob did not invent it, his own stuff, but Geezer came from an era 15 years earlier where it was a fusion of jazz and blues with a lot of like angst, industrial, industrial. Coming from Birmingham, an industrial town, was a major influence in their attitude. All those bands, Judas Priest, Judas Priest, I tour with them, and they're like a machine, precision, again, very industrial.
And was Bob upset with you because he didn't get credits in the album?
It's nothing to do with me. I did, if you look at the inner sleeve, those photos were taken the last day that we played the Blizzard of Oz tour in Daytona Beach. Those photos were taken at Disney World. Nobody was talking about, well, the new record, Diary of a Madman, is going to have this type of album cover design, and it's going to be like this. And I'm like, no, we didn't know anything about it until I'm in England, getting ready for the Diary of a Madman tour because it was released in England before it was released in the United States, the record. So we started the tour in October, late October, almost like around Halloween. And I go to the office and they say, here, check out this the album cover. And I'm looking at it and go, oh, okay. Then I open the sleeve and there's the photo. And then in Druid, it says the Ozzy Osbourne Band. Well, Tommy was there with me, and I said, "Oh, we're going to have to spend the rest of our lives explaining this."
This happened to you in Quite Riot too, in the second album.
Yeah, yeah, but that one was completely different in the way that the bass player before me had a very radical departure. I don't know if what I was told, because of course I wasn't there. Well, I'm not even going to go into detail. So there was like a big, we're not talking to this guy. It's a breakaway, you know, he's gone. So here comes time to release the album. Who are they going to put in the picture? Not the guy who played on the record because he's like, we don't want anything to do with that guy. So they put me in there. Then again, I just don't sign those covers anymore. I just tell people I appreciate it because they bring like 10 things, mental health, condition critical, the Whitesnake records, or even tribute or whatever, Speak of the Devil.
This one you recorded, all the bass
Okay,
lines.
okay. Anything that you want to know. Okay, it's very simple. Okay, no, no, no.
And
Pick up the metal, yeah, pick up mental health again. There's a section in the back that explains the whole thing. Okay, no, right there. You see in red.
no, here.
Okay, okay, yeah, that. Okay, turn it around, and you're going to read it for everybody who's watching this. It says additional musician.
Additional musician contributors. Pat Regan, Chuck Wright,
Yeah, okay. Now, Chuck Wright, what does it say?
bass guitar on Metal Health, and I Don't Wanna Let You Go.
Yeah, those two songs. It's been there since the first record was printed. We recorded in '82, so we're talking 43 years ago. What is the confusion? It's clear. Nobody's trying to hide anything. It's there. Very simple. He played on those two songs. Why he played on those two songs is because the band was Dubrow. So Chuck was in Dubrow. And when I got the phone call to come down to record one song, Thunderbird, that I used to play when I was in Dubrow before Chuck. Chuck played in Dubrow after me. Okay, so I knew Thunderbird, and when you hear in the records what I played live, with Dubrow. So we cut it really quickly, and the producer goes, we got time left. Do you remember any of the other songs like Slake Black Cadillac? And I said, yeah, I used to play that song with Quiet Riot, with Randy. So we recorded, and then two more Dubrow songs, Love's a Bitch and Let's Get Crazy. Chuck was not in the band anymore. As a matter of fact, the on the same session, they recorded the drums for Come on Feel the Noise. And the musician that came in to lay down the rough bass, so Frankie had somebody to play with, was Tony Cavazzo, Carlos's brother. 2 week. Okay, so the following within a few days, I fly to New York and I record "Speak of the Devil," and that one right there, and the thought of doing something different because I had just lost the joy of making music once Randy died, and the thought of like, wow, this is I was looking for something to give me that I would not have to go on stage and play the same set that I was playing with Randy Rhoads without Randy being there. The joy that I found playing with Frankie and Kevin, Carlos, I had just met at that session. I had no history. Frankie, I had a history of 10 years,
Ginger.
and Kevin, yeah, and I met him in 1972 and started playing with him right after I met him on my birthday, November 18, 1972. And with Kevin, I have been playing with him in the Randy Quiet Riot and then Dubrow. I lived with him. You know, we were people that struggled together to get somewhere. So we had a bond. And there were the musicians that anytime that I would go back home to LA, I will hang out with, you know. And so so it was like, okay, I think that I can find some peace of mind and get some joy of making music back in my life by going back to playing with basically the band that I left. I left Dubrow to join Ozzy. Now I'm going back to Dubrow, but now it's going to be renamed Quiet Riot. I told Kevin, listen, I'm leaving one of the biggest bands in the world. I don't want to be in somebody else's band. So he says, no problem. How about if we rename it Quiet Riot? And says, that works for me. And that was it. It was very simple.
This is the Quiet Riot gig in Brazil in 1985. And I went to the gig with some friends to look for you. We want to see RUDY SARZO on stage. And the gig started. You are in the picture here on the ticket. And then no Rudy on stage. And we were very, very frustrated. What happened, man? Nobody said a word about that.
I left the band. And of course, it's not like today with social media, everybody makes an announcement and the rest of the world knows. Back then it's like I'm not in the band anymore. I'm disconnected. So who am I gonna how am I gonna let the people know I'm not gonna play, be on tour? We were actually offered we were one of the first three bands to be offered the Rock in Rio, the first Rock in Rio.
85.
I in '85. Yeah, an old friend of mine, Phil Rodriguez, he's still involved with Rock in Rio. Uh, he came backstage at one of the shows and says, "Guys, I got this idea, this opportunity," and I'm like, "Wow, this is gonna be great!" Playing Brazil and all that, and some people just decided that it was not a good idea, and that's what happened.
Ah, that's a pity, man. But I was very happy because I saw you on stage with Blue Oyster Cult in 2012, when you played here.
Yeah, yeah, Paulo Barón. Yeah, he brought the band, and before that, Dio. I played there with Dio too. Yeah, but before we finish, I wanted to show you that I just got these photos,
The cards
the card.
you can include in the
Yes,
book.
it will be included in the book, and I got some special pens that I'm going to use to write, not only my name but stuff on it, like let's rock.
Could I ask you to write one for me?
Yes, I do. We're going to do that right now. Gaston, Gaston.
TAO.
These just arrived yesterday, the box. So you're going to be the first one. And I'm going to when I send it back to Gustavo, I'm going to put it on a separate envelope, say to Gaston. So you have it. Okay? Okay, and I got this pen. I haven't used it. Oh, it works really good. Okay. Here you go. That is, that's the first one. Okay? And I'm gonna let it dry. And I got about 1,000 of these.
Do you remember the first concert you went in your life?
It was the vanilla fudge.
Ooh.
I'm old, so that's in the '60s. And
Carmine Appice.
Carmine. He says, I mean, it wasn't just Carmine. It was like, back in the day, every band had a great drummer and bass player. But then again, there was like different levels of greatness. And when you put Carmine and Bogart together, this is like it's unique. They're not even competing with anybody else. This is a very unique rhythm section experience. And they were so heavy, they were so emotional and passionate, and it was like, this is incredible music. So I would say, I mean, of course, Paul McCartney, every time I listen to a Beatles song or a McCartney song, to me it's a bass lesson, but it's more about the recording or the compositional aspect of the bass within a song. With Tim Bogart, it was more almost like jazz, very free expression, very almost brutal, very strong, heavy. Uh, what a great rhythm section that was.
Could you see the Who live? with John Twiso and Keith Moon?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But you know what? The thing that I understood about the Who from the very beginning, that it was basically one individual, like the leader of the Who, Pete Townsend, and then you got and Whistle, amazing bass player. It was very symphonic. Like they did not play together. It's like Keith Moon was a percussion section, not just a drummer. It was like this. He filled this spectrum of the sound. Then you got Pete Townsend, not your typical rhythm or lead guitar player at all, but he was the songwriter. He was the driving force with the message of the band. Then you got one of the greatest front men ever, a vocalist, Roger Daltrey. Kind of like the messenger of this of Pete Townsend's message. Then you have N Whistle covering the not just the bottom end, but it was like whatever holes Pete Townsend left in the music, and Whistle covered. I mean, that to me is what is really, really missing nowadays. People taking chances with their music and not being stuck in a box. Just get out of the box, or push the walls of the box, make the box bigger.
Really, last one. Where is Baby Willow? We love.
Oh, baby Willow. She came in the room, she looked at me, and I was focused doing this. So she said, "Okay, you're not gonna play with me. I'm leaving." So she just left. She left.
Rudy, really nice talking to you, man. Was
You too, Gastón.
an honor for me. I love you, man. I love you, man.
Love you too.
Really like the book, man. I read it.
Oh, thank you.
It was so nice to read it. I read it in 2 days. Like it was a pleasure for me, man. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for reading it. And thank you for the interview. I really enjoyed it.